Welcome to the Immigrant Computer Scientists podcast, where we talk to computer scientists who immigrated from their home countries for study or for work or for other reasons. In these oral history interviews, you will find established and renowned computer scientists from across academia and industry narrating their experiences of immigrating from where they grew up to a completely different land, often the US. My name is Indy Gupta, and I'm your host. The IOI is one of the largest international Olympiads held for secondary school students worldwide, and each country sends a team. The puzzles at the IOI are a combination of algorithmics and programming. Remember, these are high school students. The IOI has been held annually since 1989. Over 1,100 medals have been given out since then, including over 400 gold medals. We talked to one of the few women gold medal winners at the IOI, Danqi Chen, now assistant professor of computer science at Princeton University. She was the only woman gold medal winner worldwide at the Informatics Olympiad in 2008. Danqi Chen says she was probably the only female gold medalist from China in the 20 years leading up to 2008. In fact, according to a report by Stefano Maggiolo in 2015, we'll link this report from our website, of the over 5,000 contestants in about 25 years of the Informatics Olympiads from 89 to 2014, only around 2.6% of contestants were women. In 2008, Danqi, you went to the IOI, the International Informatics Olympiad. What was it like there, being essentially one of the few girls or the only girl there, surrounded by boys? How was that experience?
First, I need to say that was actually also my first experience actually leaving China, going abroad. So I was very nervous about this, attending this kind of international competitions. At that time, I hadn't really thought too much about there were too few female students there. Probably because I was just used to that environment at that time. But it's really true. And I remember even for the dormitory I lived. So the IOI that year was held in Egypt. So all the students were living in dormitories. And I remember I only had one roommate at that time, just because they were not from Bangladesh. So I remember there were just very, very few female participants at that time.
Looking back, do you feel that you had to work extra hard just because you were a girl in this minority, or were you just doing your natural thing?
I would say in high school, because we had a team in my high school that we were all trained together. In our team, there were 2 or 3 female students, but all the others were boys. And first, I should say I definitely got used to. I hung out with them all the time. I got used to that environment. But when looking back, I would say I also made some effort to make friends with them. I haven't thought too much about this boy versus girl thing at that time, but right now I have been definitely giving more thoughts into this problem. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the International Olympiad in Informatics, the IOI. Our listeners may have heard of the International Math Olympiad, and some of them may know its structure. In the Informatics Olympiad, do you work individually? Do you work in teams? How does the progression of competition go?
So it's definitely an individual competition. So there are basically 5 subjects which have this international competitions, Olympiad competitions. So that's mathematics, physics, chemistry, biology, and informatics. So for the IOI competitions, so again, the individual competition, and there are basically two exams, and each exam, if I just make sure, I think it's 5 hours and 3 problems in each of those exams. So basically, each participant was given 3 problems to solve, and you need to basically code up 3 programs to solve each individual problem. And each problem I think it's like 100 points. And you basically, after you submit the program, and your program will be basically tested by some test cases, and will also receive the corresponding test points.
And these are algorithmic problems?
Yeah, pretty much just like algorithm problems. Yeah.
And you actually have to write a program that compiles?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
And what language was there? You can use any language, or was there a specified language?
Most participants at that time actually used Pascal or C. Yeah, I'm not sure if actually Python is allowed these days. I'm not 100% sure. Yeah,
I see.
But I can tell you like a funny thing that I was actually learning C and C++ at the time, C++ at the time. So I actually used Pascal in my day 1 competition, and you see in my day 2 competition. So I used 2 programming languages. That's very, very uncommon for sure.
Very unusual, yeah.
Yeah.
And why did you switch to using a different language?
Yeah, I feel definitely regret a little bit for that decision after so many years, just because I did pretty well in my day 1 competition. And I had some kind of confidence that, okay, maybe I should try to use another language in day 2. Yeah, but I actually made a mistake on my second competition. Yeah.
Because you were not as familiar with...
Yeah. But
so you write these programs, and then they run the programs on the input, and are the points scored for correctness, speed, or both of them?
Oh, only for the correctness. But each test case, there is a time limit, and the time limit is actually a part of the problem description. So basically, like also different problems are actually different test cases designed with like different size of the inputs. So for some smaller inputs, so your program, even if, for example, if you code up like algorithm in like O(n) cube complexity, it is not a problem. So you can still get that point. But for some others, maybe it's just too slow to finish that program in the time limit.
Can you give an example of a problem, sample problem?
There were actually a lot of problems about dynamic programming and data structures. But all these problems actually come with a very nice story and a background. So it feels like a more practical problem that students need to solve. But you actually need to build a mathematical model and figure out, okay, what should be the right algorithm that you want to do that.
When you went to Egypt, it was a team of students and maybe leaders who went from China to Egypt. In preparing for this International Olympiad, how was the program? How did the program prepare you in China for this?
In the last year of my high school, so that there was a selection process. So first, basically, like 20 students were chosen for preparing for that competition, and I think a couple months before the IOI competition, four students out of those 20 students will be finally chosen as the Chinese selection team. I don't know, the Chinese team. Yes.
I see.
And so during basically like the course of the like 1 year's preparation, so basically students, it's actually very fun. I would just want to say that it's really I really still miss those days. Yeah, just because all these students actually know each other very well, and they actually try to solve problems together, or even change others of difficult problems, and also these people can brainstorm together and also come up with different solutions to the same problem. I think that was actually a very fun process.
So the 1 year of preparation, was there much training provided, or was it just the exercise or practice of solving problems?
So all these 20 students actually come from different parts of China. So they still just stay in their hometown, and they still need to go to the school like regularly, not really regularly, because just because the reason that a lot of students need to prepare for the national college entrance exam. But for all these 20 students, they know that they don't need to take that exam at that point.
I see.
Yeah. So they still take some classes, but they can have extra time, a lot of free time to prepare for these Olympic competitions. Yeah.
I see. So your life is made a little bit easier by taking one thing off your plate, so you can focus on the Olympiad.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you've already written an exam and you've already gotten in the top 20 in the country.
Exactly. Yeah.
Was there any other interesting experience from the Olympiad before we move on to the next topic?
Yeah, I would just say I got to know a lot of friends just even at a young that stage. And many of them actually went to Tsinghua University together with me. And that was really a very a fun experience. And also you also mentioned this individual versus team team competitions. So actually in college, there is also very similar competition called ACM ICPC, programming context. Mm-hmm. Actually, a lot of students just move from this kind of individual competition to the team competition. So that is actually three students actually form a team and try to solve problems and collaborate together in a limited time with only one computer.
It's a kind of preparation for the ICPC. And of course, the ICPC is well known in universities, and pretty much all the US universities send teams to the ICPC.
Yeah.
Finally, we have Jelani Nelson, professor of computer science at UC Berkeley. He grew up in the US Virgin Islands.
There's basically this Olympic event at the high school level called the IOI, the International Olympiad for Informatics. Each country selects a team of 4 high schoolers to represent them and, competes, live at, in some physical, they fly to some location. It's a different country every year. And compete. It's like the Olympics, right? But for programming. So anyway, how do you get on the American team for this, right, in high school? Well, there are some online contests. And if you do well enough over the course of a few contests, you get invited to participate in a summer training camp, which is held in South Carolina, because that's where the coach is based at Clemson University. And then, there's some training there, and there are some contests that are run locally there. And then if you do very well there, then you get selected to be on the 4-person team. But, probably something like 20 people, I don't remember the exact number, but let's say roughly 20 people get invited to the summer camp every summer, but only 4 are picked to be on the team. So I was invited to give a talk to the training team, these 20 people, last summer, 2020. And, the idea was to let these kids know about what professional algorithms looks like later, like a researcher in algorithms, what are they doing now? Because a lot of the algorithms you learn for those kinds of Olympiads were algorithms that were developed decades ago, right? They don't know what modern algorithms research looks like. So, I put together such a talk, basically like a research talk, but I had to make sure to say a little bit more of the definitions because these were high schoolers. But at the very end, I once I finished talking about research, I touched on another topic, which was the following. Before the talk, I looked at the USACO website, and I looked at who the kids were that made it to the training camp. Yeah. And, it lists, for each kid, it lists the high school that they're coming from. And I looked at that website for the last decade, and I just made a spreadsheet. And I just looked at, okay, how many kids came from each state? Okay. And then I actually put it into a heat map. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you can go, I think tinyurl.com/USACO map. You can go and see it yourself. If you look at, how many distinct kids made it to that training camp over a decade, like 2011 to 2020, is around 120, 130 unique kids. There are some kids who make it multiple years. I only counted them once. And then I asked the question of, okay, how many came from California? How many came from Florida, et cetera, et cetera? Of the 50 United States of America, there are 24 states that sent 0 kids to the camp in a decade. If you look at the remaining 26 states, 13 of them, the one or more kid who came from that state in a decade all attended the same high school in the state. And then if you look at, so what are the top states? Number 1, California, 60 kids, 60. Number 2, I believe, is Virginia. Virginia was about 15, 16 kids. Then Texas. And then it starts getting sub 10. Massachusetts was like 7 kids. Okay. New York, the state of New York sent 2 kids compared to 60 from California, right? And then I zoomed in on those Californians. Okay, what's going on in California? Of the 60, 57 were from the Bay Area. And from the 57, I think all but one were from the South Bay, meaning not San Francisco, not Berkeley, not Oakland, not Walnut Creek. They were all from a very small, like 5-10 mile radius around Stanford, right? And, so you could say, oh, of course, it's because Google's there, Apple's there, all these tech parents are telling their kids to do this. I mean, that's probably part of it. But also, it turns out there was like a pay-to-train training camp there where like it's an after-school activity. Parents can send their kids there and pay money. And former Olympians who are on teams are paid to train these kids, right? So, it's access to opportunity. It's awareness of the opportunity. Like when I was in high school, I never even knew that the IOI existed. As I mentioned, I never even heard of MIT. Yeah. And, when I went to college, I had MIT actually, I told MIT like I'm willing to advertise for the school, and they paid my plane ticket to fly home during spring break, I remember once or twice, and gave me a bunch of flyers to visit high schools and encourage kids to apply to MIT. And I remember going to one of the high schools and the kids saying, oh yeah, MIT, okay, yeah, I never heard of it, but I was considering going to DeVry or ITT, so maybe I'll look at MIT too, right? Like people just had no clue what MIT was. Yeah. So I think it starts, part of it is just like, just evangelize it to more people, get people in the pipeline earlier. I mean, because that's another thing. I think getting in early is important because it's true that you don't have to be exposed to CS before college to be successful at CS. But, but it's hard to, but I think being exposed earlier helps, right? It does give you a leg up. I look at some of the star, PhD applicants who apply, and they have all these papers in real conferences during undergrad, et cetera. And I know some of them because, I taught some of them in classes as a professor. And some of them, dig a little more into their background. They came into college basically knowing what research was. Like their parents had PhDs. Maybe they did the Intel Science Fair in high school. Maybe they did the Olympiads or whatever, right? So, it helps to be exposed early. I didn't know what research was. I didn't really know what a PhD was until I got to MIT. And even then, it took time for me to figure out what it was.
If you haven't already done so, please listen to the previous segments in the show. We covered Yugoslavia in episodes 1 through 4, Brazil in episodes 5 through 8, the Middle East in episodes 9 through 12, US Virgin Islands in episode 13, and China in episode 14, and several anonymous narrators featured in episode 15. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes from the Immigrant Computer Scientist podcast as we visit other parts of the world. All the music used in episodes of the Immigrant Computer Scientist podcast is royalty-free. All voice recordings were performed with and are reproduced with full consent of narrators and participants. You can find music credits on our website. Join the online discussion about this podcast on all major social media, including Twitter and Facebook, with the handle CSImmigrant and hashtag CSImmigrant. And of course, the episode guide is available at our website, csimmigrant.org. This is the Immigrant Computer Scientists Podcast.